I saw that I had that stupid glare in the back again, so I turned it around this time. Sorry about that. Hopefully not too distracting. Second up on land use drawdown solutions is coastal wetlands. It ranks at number 52 by 2050. Again, just like forest protection, it has reduced CO2 at 3.19 gigatons and CO2 protected in the coastal wetlands at 53.34 gigatons. And just like forest protection, the global cost and savings data are too variable to be determined, but the importance of this in drawdown can hardly be overestimated, right? Sawgrasses and lilies in the Everglades, a complex region of tropical wetlands that has been drained to make way for sugarcane and development for more than 125 years. Ranking with the Camargue in France, the Pantanal in South America as one of the greatest wetlands in the world. It's a rain-fed grassland on a limestone shelf. Slow-moving water moves through the grasses to remove pollutants, making it a highly effective water treatment system. So before the water enters the marine ecosystem, a lot of the pollutants get removed, including the nutrient pollutants. In 2000, following an act of Congress, the most expensive and complex environmental restoration in human history began and continues to this day, despite constant political resistance. You know that it remains politically controversial battle between developers and environmental and climate aficionados, let's say. Coastal wetlands in specific are the continuum between land and the ocean. There's an ocean out there, and as we said, they not only filter all the pollutants before the water is going into the marine ecosystem, but they are also natural barriers against storms, storm surge, inundation. They are rich habitats for migratory birds, shellfish, finfish. Various animals like mangroves are a key part of the Bengal tigers' foray preying grounds. Lots of the livelihoods depend on this and so on. So one can hardly say too much about what this is all good for. The ecosystem services from wetlands. Wetlands in general just means soil is covered by water majority of the time. So there are inland wetlands and there are coastal wetlands, and we will see few types of wetlands as well. And there are natural wetlands, and now there are also many human wetlands which have been increasing. You can think of rice paddy flooded for irrigation is a wetland, for example, right? So in terms of ecosystem services, you have cultural services, sacred natural sites and other faith sites, recreation, tourism, ecotourism, cultural monuments, provisioning services like fish and food, raw materials, genetic resources, water supply, medical resources, hydropower, and regulating services, so carbon sequestration, which is referred to as blue carbon because it's in the blue ocean side of land, and it's argued that based on the specific ecosystem of the wetland, the blue carbon sequestration potential is 3 to 10 times the forests on land, and it is also argued that they are not susceptible or vulnerable to wildfires. For example, a well-grown mature forest which has a lot of standing biomass can burn down and release all that carbon in no time, like it happens regularly in across the world, especially as it happened recently in Australia, which also killed 1 billion animals. So that's a sad situation as well. So the blue carbon sequestration in coastal wetlands is not so subject to such rapid perturbations. They do water purification, flow rate regulation. The salinity and temperature have impacted the evolution of many species in these transitions from land to ocean, and the oxygen levels and so on depend on flow rate regulation and seasonality of where the water comes from, like snowmelt and so on, or spring storms, etc. Flood mitigation, coastal protection, waste decomposition, and there are supporting services, of course, like primary production. We'll look at some numbers, nutrient recycling, and global water cycle. They are a very important part of the global hydrologic cycle. Sorry, this is a bit not in good quality here, but this is from the Ramsar Agreement document. Ramsar is a place in Iran where the global coastal wetland global wetland agreement was made, and you can see that there are a large number of wetlands, the coastal wetlands and inland wetlands, of course, but countries like India with long coastlines have many important wetlands to be protected, as well as here in Southeast Asia, Australia, Africa, Europe, North and South America, and so on. Ecological character of wetlands from the Ramsar Convention of 2005. The convention redefined wetland ecological character as the combination of the ecosystem components, processes and benefits / services that characterize the wetland at a given point in time. So here it is: components, biological, genetic, species, ecosystem, chemical and physical, with ecosystem services, as we saw, including provisioning, regulating, supporting and cultural. So the processes include hydrologic cycling that we talked about, nutrient cycling, energy cycling, soil formation, primary production, species interactions, and dispersal and migration. So the life cycles heavily depend on these wetlands and the transition from the coast to the oceans. This is some data showing for various regions like Africa, Asia, Europe, Latin America, Caribbean, North America. I didn't label them just to show that they are all declining at various rates. So there is a wetland index for global and regional trends in natural wetland areas since 1970, and obviously news is not good. Man-made wetlands have gone up over the same time, but they don't have the same ecosystem services and are often part of the land degradation overall. So one has to be careful. This is showing that if you look at percentages of globally threatened freshwater vertebrates and decapods like crabs and crayfish in biogeographic realms that depend on wetlands for their life cycle, tropics like Indo-Malaya, neotropics and Afrotropics are again the hotspots for wetland threatened species of wetland dependent animals and fish and decapods and so on and so forth. So just like deforestation, even the coastal forests are being affected greatly in the tropical regions. Obviously all the global protection agreements have to incentivize the protections of these in poor global south. Primary production, a measure of the accumulation of organic matter for a range of wetland ecosystems. Wetlands, salt marshes tend to be high latitude things, tidal freshwater marsh, mangroves, forested northern peatlands, and non-forested northern peatlands have a range of net primary production in grams of dry weight in meters squared per year, which are typically much higher than the non-wetland regions like marine ecosystems, open ocean ecosystems, and general land areas. So they are rich producers of the food supply to the bottom of the food web that's protected by them. In terms of mitigation hierarchy, the Ramsar Agreement Convention lists avoiding, mitigating, and compensating. So avoidance includes site selection, designing and scheduling, minimization of physical controls, operational controls, and abatement controls. So it shouldn't feed back onto avoidance, and it should help restoration. So re-establishment of habitat types, re-establishing biodiversity values, re-establishing ecosystem services, and offset, so restoration offset and averted loss offset. There are many examples of private companies and NGOs and governments, policies, etc., that are trying to recover blue carbon, which is a more recent effort, but hopefully that's going to pick up. Okay, so overall, of the 121 million acres of coastal wetlands globally, 18 million acres are protected today. If an additional 57 million acres are protected by 2050, the resulting avoided emissions and continued sequestration could total 3.2 gigatons of carbon dioxide. While limited in area, coastal wetlands contain large carbon sinks. Protecting them would secure an estimated 15 gigatons of carbon, equivalent to over 53 gigatons of carbon dioxide if released into the atmosphere. Okay, so obviously a great no regret solution with great value in terms of ecosystem services and protection against storms and so on.